So you guys know I've been telling you a lot about this shift to a multipolar world, how basically because of the war in Ukraine and the sanctions that they put on Russia, they basically encouraged Russia and China and Iran and Venezuela to develop these alternative, payment systems, bypassing SWIFT, bypassing Visa, MasterCard, and of course, carrying out energy sales in denominations other than the US dollar. So, usually Russia would sell gas to the Europeans in euros and dollars, and now it's in rubles. So that shores up the value of the ruble, and it undermines the hegemony of the euro and the dollar. And of course, India bought oil from Russia in rubles, not US dollars. And now here's another groundbreaking development. I mean, this is crazy. This is really incredible. Here's the headline from Bloomberg, and they say that. Hold on, I'll pull it up for you. One moment. You can see it now. So China has begun buying coal and oil from Russia in yuan, in the renminbi. So that's China's currency. Again, this is astronomical. This is astronomical. This is crazy. This doesn't usually happen, right? So Russian coal and oil paid for in yuan is about to start flowing into China as the two countries try to maintain their energy trade in the face of growing international outrage over the invasion of Ukraine. Several Chinese firms used local currency to buy Russian coal in March, and the first cargoes will arrive this month. So that's according to the Chinese consultancy Fenway Energy Information Services. Okay, and these will be the first commodity shipments paid for in renminbi since the US and Europe penalized Russia and cut several of its banks off from the international financial system, according to traders. So you guys remember they've sanctioned. Russia's central bank. They've frozen roughly half of its assets. And of course, they've sanctioned, practically everything except the energy industry because the Europeans get 40% of their gas from Russia. They just can't. That it would be suicidal. Now, they continued in the article and they say that sellers of Russian crude have also offered to give buyers in Asia's largest economy the flexibility to pay in yuan. The first cargoes of the ESPO grade bought with the Chinese currency will be delivered to independent refiners in May, so that's next month, according to people familiar with the purchases. China has long bristled at the dollar's dominance in global trade and the political leverage it gives the US. Efforts to chip away at the status quo are now being accelerated by Western steps to punish Russia for its war of aggression. What have I been telling you for the last weeks? This is literally exactly 100% what I've been telling you for the last weeks. It's not a coincidence. It's not just one thing. You have so many new groundbreaking, earth-shattering developments that are taking place. Oil sales that usually happen in US dollars are not happening in US dollars anymore. They're happening in renminbi or in rupees. This is unheard of. Russia demanding rubles for its gas is unheard of. They would have never gotten away with this 2 months ago. Again, this is exactly what it's nice to feel, vindicated. Because it's one thing for me to say it, but you can see here officially from Bloomberg. It's So Moscow is offering ruble payments to Indian oil buyers, right? We just talked about that. While Saudi Arabia is in talks with Beijing to price some of its crude in yuan. Man, I don't know who wrote this article, but they've been watching my channel. I'm telling you. I just said all of this to you guys, right? We've been talking about this for ages. Now, it's unlikely the yuan will pose a serious challenge to the dollar's dominance. That's true. However, at least in the short term, that's the key aspect. In the short term, the US currency was used for 88% of foreign exchange transactions in 2019, compared to just 4.3% for the yuan, according to the Bank for International Settlements. Right? So, of course, you're not going to wake up tomorrow and flick a switch and say, oh, we have a multipolar world and the dollar's global dominance is gone. No, that's not how it works. But just to give you, think about this, okay? I'll just give you some food for thought. We're in 2022, okay? Barely 100 years ago, just a little over 100 years ago, right? The British Empire was at its height. And the British Empire is the biggest empire in history. 25% of the Earth's land mass 25% of the Earth's population under British rule. Look at the UK today, right? Not even today. Like, you don't even have to go that far. You can just look at the UK at the end of the 19th century and then look at the UK in the 1950s. So in the span of a few decades, I mean, it's completely, completely changed situation. And obviously the US took over. But keep that in mind, right? So both steelmaking and power plant coal are being paid for in renminbi. These deals are traditionally done in dollars. But many Chinese buyers temporarily halted purchases after the US and Europe cut off Russian lenders from the SWIFT interbank messaging system. So again, SWIFT is the international messaging system. It doesn't actually transfer money. There's not actual like money being shifted. It records transactions and then communicates them to other banks. So it's like a ledger in a way. And you have about 200 countries and 11,000 banks that are connected to SWIFT. So it really is the number one system. There's just no denying that. The Russians and the Chinese have their own versions of SWIFT, but they're nowhere near as popular as SWIFT. They're basically just localized versions. But if I told you 2 months ago that China's UnionPay, which is the credit cards, they would come in to Russia and take over Visa and MasterCard's share and link that to Mir, and Venezuela and Iran would link their payment systems to Mir, you would have never believed me. So don't underestimate how these sanctions on Russia are actually encouraging or let's say forcing, if you will, the global south to pursue other avenues. And it's just like they're saying here, Chinese buyers temporarily halted purchases because they're afraid. They're having second thoughts about doing this stuff in dollars, because today they're sanctioning Russia. Tomorrow they might be sanctioning China. Well, they might be sanctioning China even more, or trying to cut China off the same way they're doing to Russia. Who knows? Or a key Chinese partner. And people don't want that. They don't like when you use your reserve currency, the US dollar, the global reserve currency, as a weapon, right? Because this is economic warfare. Maybe it's hard to see that. It's a bit difficult to visualize it because it's not a bomb, but it is warfare, and they are using the strength of the dollar to kind of screw over the Russians, right? There's no denying that. That's the whole point. So people are having second thoughts. Now, Russia was China's number 2 coal supplier last year, filling the gap left by Beijing's trade tussle with Australia. Nearly half of the imports from Russia are metallurgical coal, which is in demand after the partial resumption of operations in the Chinese steel-making hub of Tangshan. This type of coal isn't subject to government price controls that apply to power plant fuel. Now, while Chinese buyers are interested in importing more Russian supplies, logistics and financing barriers will ultimately cap the flows. So again, this is a logistical issue. It's not an issue of, what currency they want to use. The ruble, meanwhile, has recovered to levels where it was before the invasion of Ukraine. So again, this is something we've been looking at. We saw Monday, the first Monday after the war began, the ruble plummeted, right? Because they had announced the sanctions over the weekend and it went all the way down, and now it's all the way back up. Again, I can, they say in the article, but it's correct. It's about 80 rubles to the dollar, right? So if you just look up $1 in rubles, here you go. Right now it's 85. I mean, yesterday morning or this morning actually it was 80. So, it's fluctuating around that point. It's recovered quite well. That's what we're interested in looking at. So you can see here, 13th of February, it was 77, 85. That's not a huge difference, like, 133, right? Or 140. So that's their point, and it's a very valid one. So I think this is very vindicating to read this. I wanted to walk you through it because this really is a continuation of everything else I've told you guys and the other things that are happening. It's not looking good, man, for the US. Again, in the short term, it's not going to make a huge dent, but long term, when because in 2014 the Russians realized they need to build an alternative to SWIFT, they need to de-dollarize their foreign exchange reserves, and they did, but it wasn't enough. And so after this debacle, and other countries that are watching this too, they're going to have second thoughts. They're going to start thinking, you know what, maybe we should de-dollarize, maybe we should start doing business in other denominations, maybe we should pursue an alternative a system to SWIFT. because we don't want to get locked out. We don't want to get screwed in the future because the Americans are, feeling trigger happy, or the EU want to use economic warfare against us.